Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person. Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
But you haven't. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing.
He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
They want to make you drink Starbucks every day from now until forever.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. It's Wednesday, it's midweek, and we are back. We got a good show today. We got a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about, including some, maybe some cracks in Trump's support, maybe a little bit. We'll see. Those are fun stories. We got Ron Johnson running away from reporters, not a surprise. And that's, of course, based on the January 6th hearings. Ron Johnson could be in a little bit of trouble. That's fun. Then we're going to shift gears. We're going to talk about how some that claim to be on the left are praising Tucker Carlson again, and why. So, not good. So we're going to talk about that. And finally, Hillary Clinton throwing trans people under the bus because they're just not that important. It's not a winning issue. It's not a winning issue. Well, I've got some words about that. So that said, please like and share the stream. Very important you do so. Helps us out as usual. Look, hey, I'll be honest. I need your help more than ever. Okay, so that's because, look, it's, it's not good out there on YouTube for any of the lefty channels, independent media at this point. Views are super, super bad. So again, and it's not just me, it's all over the board. And so if you could, please give us a share. Please like the stream. Again, all of that stuff helps us out very much. We've got to continue to get out the progressive message to debunk the far right, and let people know what the hell's going on in the world. All right, with that said, let's go to the January 6th stuff. Go to Ron Johnson. Good old Run and Ron. Following Tuesday's damning January 6th testimony, Senator Ron Johnson has come under intense pressure and scrutiny to answer why he was, or members of his staff, more specifically, trying to deliver a list of fake electors to Vice President Mike Pence. On Tuesday, a reporter caught up to him, and this is what happened.
How much did you know about what your chief of staff was doing with the alternate slates of electors? No, you're not. I can see your phone. I can see your screen.
Can you explain what your chief of staff was doing?
Does your chief of staff still work for you, Senator?
Can you explain what happened there? Why was your chief of staff even offering this to the vice president?
That's a complete non-story. We've issued a statement, and this is a non-story. I don't know what you're even concerned about.
Well, they said
Non-story. I don't even know what you're talking about. Okay, wait. If it's a non-story, then... Oh, okay, let me just get this straight. If you don't know what they're talking about, you can't then go and claim that it's a non-story. Because if you don't know what they're talking about, you don't have the details, so how can you make the determination if it is a non-story? That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense at all. And again, that's not a big surprise here. But let me just point out how I really like it when politicians attempt to use the I'm on the phone trick. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm really, really busy. I can't talk to you right now, reporter, because I'm on this very, very important phone call, which is, I'm talking to somebody right now. No, you're not. No, you're not. By the way, I'm pretty sure they still use that because in the past they would get away with it. You know, when they had phones, the old style flip phones that you couldn't really tell, or even the old style cell phones where you couldn't really tell, didn't have much of a screen, or at least not that big of a screen. Now, of course, the screen is basically the entirety of the phone, just about. So I just love that trick. It's very, very fun, especially since they think they can get away with it, but really, no, they can't. So now that said, on a more serious note, Johnson's got some things to answer for, okay? Because I think that he is lying about not having any idea that this was happening. Again, this is his own staff. So now let me get into the details. So text message exchanges, and this was revealed by the January 6th committee yesterday, showed Johnson's chief of staff on that day, Sean Riley, texting a Pence assistant, Chris Hodgson, to tell him that the senator had an alternate slate of electors pledged for Donald Trump for Mike Pence to review ahead of the certification of which he would be presiding. Now, of course, this is involved in the whole, Green Bay sweep. We go and first Pence doesn't certify the election, and then that creates all sorts of confusion. Right-wing media steps in, also continues to create more confusion, which would allow these alternate slates of electors to be able to basically be to replace having these state governments replace those legitimate electors with the illegitimate electors, the ones who have already pledged to vote for Donald Trump, disenfranchising Biden voters. So now here's what the text message said. This is from Riley. Johnson needs to hand something to V. POTUS. Please advise. Hodgson asks, what is it? Riley says, alternate slate of electors for Michigan and Wisconsin because archivists didn't receive them. Hodgson says, yeah, do not give that to him. So Hodgson was correct. Again, this was Mike Pence's team saying, we're not interested in your crap. But there is a lie in that text thread, by the way, because he says, well, the archivist didn't receive it. No, the archivist actually did. As Politico's Kyle Cheney points out, months ago, the committee revealed evidence that the fake elector documents from Michigan and Wisconsin were delivered and received by the National Archives well in advance of the joint congressional session. To which I say, oops. Uh-oh. That's a lie. Now, the archivists, when they received this, did not consider them to be legitimate because they weren't. And so they did not hand those over to Mike Pence. So now either his chief of staff is lying to Pence's staff, or he was lied to himself by someone. Who was it? Could have been Ron Johnson? I don't know. Very good questions, very interesting questions, and stuff that we might like the answer to, might be kind of important. You know what I'm saying? So now, the archives, again, did get the slate of fake electors in those documents. Again, the question is Ron Johnson, does he just not know what his staff is doing? Oh, yeah, my chief of staff. I had no idea what he was up to. I had no idea that he was sending text messages and trying to deliver a slate of fake electors to Pence's team. I had no idea. Really? That seems a little suspect. It's a little sussy. Very sussy, in fact. And look, the other thing is, Johnson had spread the big lie about the election. He had held rallies. He had talked about this. And so, again, he believed in the voter fraud lie, which, again, led to, or would have led credence to, replacing these electors with fake electors. Now, the other thing that doesn't make sense here is that he claims he doesn't know who delivered that package to him or what it was. But then said, you know what? We're going to give it to the vice president anyway. We're going to try to give it to his staff. Again, super sussy. No, he's lying about it because this is fraud. Look, putting forward these fake electors to ignore the election results in order to help Trump steal an election, that's illegal. But to Johnson says, oh no, non-story, even though I don't know any of the details and I had no idea what was going on, I think it's still a non-story. No, it implicates your office in a soft coup attempt. That's why you're denying knowledge. No wonder he tried to lie, run away, flee, get away from these reporters, pretend that he's on a phone call. Deny. Ron Johnson knows exactly what he did. Now, is Ron Johnson going to be held accountable? Well, that's another question. All right, moving on. It appears the January 6th hearings might be having a little bit of an impact, and at least swaying some Republicans from supporting former President Donald Trump. Representative Don Bacon recently told CNN's Manu Raju that after watching the hearings, that he will not be supporting former President Trump in the 2024 Republican primary if he decides to run. So now, that's interesting. Bacon's announcement came shortly after news broke that Arizona House Speaker Rusty Bowers, who testified against Trump during Tuesday's hearing, would indeed still support Donald Trump, despite the fact that he not only tried to steal an election, which, again, using illegal methods, even as Bowers pointed out, that it was absolutely illegal. Nonetheless, he said, I'd still support you. I'll still vote for Donald Trump. Of course I would. Even though Trump personally attacked me, called me a rhino. In fact, this statement here that was read out during the hearing called Bowers a rhino, claimed that the lawmaker had told Trump that the election was rigged and that Trump had in fact won Arizona. Bowers said, no, I'm not a rhino, and no, Trump did not win Arizona. Both of those things were false. He also said the ex-president's supporters had threatened him. And I want to show you that little bit of the testimony. Take a look.
They have had video panel trucks with videos of me proclaiming me to be a pedophile and a pervert and a corrupt and politician, and blaring loudspeakers in my neighborhood and leaving literature both on my property, but arguing and threatening with neighbors and with myself. So it was disturbing. It was disturbing.
Yes, very, very disturbing indeed. Nonetheless, hey, I'm still going to support Trump. Now, again, he's not the only one that was threatened by like that, by the way. Numerous state officials were inundated by threats of stochastic terrorism against them that came from Donald Trump and his pressure campaign. Bowers, Raffensperger, Culver, the list goes on. There were even poll workers like Shane Moss, who were falsely accused by the Trump campaign and his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, alongside her mother, Ruby Freeman, of rigging the election count in Georgia with alleged suitcases full of ballots. Again, that's been debunked. There were not suitcases full of ballots for Biden. Moss, who was black, described people making hateful and racist threats of violence following these accusations, including one message saying that, quote, be glad it's 2020, not 1920. Well, wouldn't they love to bring it back to 1920? She says, quote, I don't want anyone knowing my name. I don't go to the grocery store. Haven't been anywhere at all as a result of all these threats. The mother and daughter were among poll workers or election officials in several states who found themselves being threatened for not helping Trump steal the election. So now this is the thing. This is why the hearings are important. There's a human element and an impact to this. Okay? So now people's lives, understand, they were threatened. They were even destroyed by Trump's lies. It nearly got members of Congress, including the vice president, killed. There were police officers that were harmed and killed from January 6th. You even had a Trump supporter, Ashley Babbitt, who was killed as a result of these lies. She would never have been there at the Capitol that day had Donald Trump and his team not spread this horrific lie that the election was stolen by the Democrats without any evidence. She wouldn't have been there. It wouldn't have happened, and we wouldn't have to talk about it. And so that's the human cost. And by the way, this is all to stroke one man's ego. And that's what's the saddest thing about it. He just didn't want to admit that he lost. He didn't want to give up the power that he had had. And so, look, if you don't see the damage that this has caused, if you don't see the cost and have this move you in any sort of way, I don't know what to tell you. But we know people out there that have not been moved by any of this. In fact, Mike Pence, I showed you a video yesterday. He's out there defending Donald Trump, saying that the person, the most dishonest person I've ever seen in my life, Joe Biden, obviously, of course. Bro, you worked for the president. You worked for Donald Trump. Over 30,000 lies documented during his 4 years. It's insane. And then, of course, Bowers, as I mentioned, saying he'd support Trump 2024. Now, getting back to Don Bacon, he says, well, I won't support him in the primary, but I can guarantee, like a lot of these Republicans, that he will support Trump if he's in a general election. Because remember, right-wingers, they're authoritarian by nature. They will follow what they perceive to be a strong leader. And so far, no one has been strong enough to take on Donald Trump and win. And that's sad. Because, again, everyone who's went up against him, claiming to be strong, always ends up being just a very weak, slimy politician who only wants to remain in power. Now, of course, we'll have to see if Bacon decides to hold true, or if he's going to let himself get fried by Trump during the primary. We'll see. We'll see. I don't hold up a lot of hope. Pence won't be strong enough either. We already know that. We already know Pence is incredibly weak and sad and pathetic. All right. Moving on. The founder of a pro-Trump organization that helped organize the infamous Stop the Steal rally on January 6th is now turning on the former president over the recent primary election in Alabama. Now, in comments published by Politico on Wednesday, the Women for Trump founder, Amy Kremer, criticized the former president over his endorsement of Katie Britt. Katie Britt recently won the Republican Alabama Senate primary. On Tuesday, Britt defeated Representative Mo Brooks, who was backed by Kremer and many other conservatives. Here's what she said, quote, "Donald Trump is disconnected from the base. It's time for those of us in the movement to get back to basics, back to our first principles. We were here long before President Trump came along, and we're going to be here long afterwards." Oh, damn. Oh, those would be fighting words. When you lose Women for Trump. Now, okay, look, to be fair, very, very likely if Donald Trump wins the primary, yes, she will probably support him. Understand that, again, these people are authoritarians. They will obviously go for the person who they perceive to be the strongest because they have a tendency to give them all their banana. That's really what it's about. But at the moment, here we have some divisions going on here. So now, here's the situation that happened, though. So obviously, she was in favor of Mo Brooks. Donald Trump had initially endorsed Mo Brooks. Then he decided to do the cardinal sin of telling the MAGA crowd to get over 2020. Hey, you should, just kind of forget about or put the election behind you and go forward. Go forward. Let's look to the future now and try to win in the next, 2022, 2024 for the MAGA movement. And he was met by boos, massive, massive boos. They were not in favor of this. They were not buying it because, again, the majority of the Republican base believes that the election was stolen. And no amount of facts and evidence is going to sway them from that. I mean, for the hardcore MAGA adherents who are convinced to have staked their entire reputations and their entire livelihoods trying to prove non-existent fraud had happened, they're not going to give this up. Because then, of course, they would have to admit that they were wrong or that they were misled, and that would just destroy their entire worldview. Their reality would shatter around them, and it would cause a mental break beyond any mental break I think we've ever seen. So it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. They're not going to admit that they were wrong. And so what do? They go after Mo Brooks instead. Of course. Of course. So now, what really happened, again, is that after that, Mo Brooks had just nosedived in the polls. Donald Trump looked at it and said, ooh, I'm not going to back a loser. I'm going to back off on my endorsement and decide to back Britt, who was already massively ahead in the polls, about 20 points. She ended up winning the primary by 25 points. That's despite Mo Brooks sucking up to Donald Trump and doing the most shameful begging to get that endorsement back, to get back on Donald Trump's good side. Remember, he calls himself MAGA Mo. MAGA Mo. Okay. All right. But here's the thing. If you're a loser in the polls, no matter how loyal you are, Donald Trump's not going to back you. If you're going to lose, if it looks very likely that you're going to lose, because he only backs winners. No matter how much you kiss his ass, he's going to throw you under the bus if it suits him politically. Now, that, of course, has Kremer and her daughter Kylie very, very upset. In fact, in a series of tweets, she called out Trump, saying, I'm on the ground in Alabama, and Trump got this way wrong. People are very angry at him. I'm not sure they will get over this. They view it as a slap in the face and a disconnect from the people. I get it. Girl, you are so close. So incredibly close. Just a little bit further. And then you'll realize that he's not on your side. I made the point yesterday that Donald Trump has never been a man of the people. Now, I don't think Mo Brooks is either. I don't think 99% of politicians, media figures, they're completely disconnected from the average person. There are only a handful of people out there that truly understand members of the working class, the average American. Donald Trump is definitely not one of them. But he is really good at conning people into thinking that he actually cares. He doesn't. So what's interesting here is the small break. And maybe it is just a small break. But little by little, you've got a couple of people breaking off from Donald Trump. Now, I think some of that might have to do with some of the evidence presented at the January 6 hearings. Overall, I mean, the majority of the American people already think that Donald Trump did something criminal. 58% of Americans think that Trump bears either a good or great amount of responsibility for the events on January 6th and should be charged with a crime. That includes 19% of Republicans. You might think that's not that much. That is 1 in 5 Republicans, which is honestly more than I expected. So what I'm saying is maybe they're trying to break through. Maybe they're actually starting to break through. And look, even if Republicans will still vote for Trump, ultimately, it doesn't look like they're supporting a lot of his endorsed candidates. Earlier this spring, for example, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger had defeated Trump-backed primary picks. Just this week, Kemp-backed businessman Mike Collins, son of the late U.S. Representative Matt Collins, will defeat former Democratic State Representative Vernon Jones, who is endorsed by Trump. Trump picked Jake Evans, the former chairman of the State Ethics Commission, also is projected to lose against Richard McCormick in the 6th congressional district runoff. So that's the most recent elections. Now, again, in this case, as I mentioned, Donald Trump gave his support to Katie Britt because she was already 20 points ahead. So in this case, it's not him. And by the way, this is important because he had come out and said, the reason that Katie Britt won is because of me. I endorsed her, and that's the only reason that she won, because she's MAGA candidate and I supported her. No, that's not true at all. He already bet on the winning horse, already going on to win. And so, and doing so by pulling his endorsement from somebody who was slated to lose. Now, I can see how, according to, this family, these activists, how that would be a slap in the face. Kind of really shows you the kind of person Donald Trump actually is. At the end of the day, he only cares about his own ego, himself, and about winning. Sad. Baby. All right, moving on. We're just getting through the stories today. Russell Brand is heaping praise on Fox News, and specifically Tucker Carlson, for being the only ones to criticize big business. Take a look.
Isn't it interesting that Tucker Carlson is the only person that have like Glenn Greenwald on? He's the only person that will attack big business. And lots of you that are like left-leaning or Democrat in your previous biases or just in your persuasion will think that Tucker Carlson maybe is what did someone call him once? A human boat shoe. A lot of people don't care for Tucker Carlson. But what interests me is that Fox News used to be a channel that we continually berated and baited when it was like Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity and all those guys. We used to torment them about their stance on numerous issues. But nowadays, if you want a channel that's going to criticize big business, big tech, big corporations, mainstream media generally and broadly, peculiarly, you're most likely to find that on Fox News. Why don't we have a leftist mainstream media outlet that would showcase a voice like Jimmy Dawes? Why is that? What has become of the left?
What has become of the left? So there's a lot here, right? Now, for one, he's actually right. We should have a leftist media outlet. You know why we don't have a leftist mainstream media outlet? Because there's no money in it. That's the problem, Russell. That's the big problem. And I agree. Again, if anybody's pointing at CNN or MSNBC and saying, "Oh, that's the left," no, that's not at all true. Preposterous. Now that unfortunately leads to a problem where Tucker Carlson will lightly tweak big corporations over nonsense issues like being too woke, right? And he gets praise from members of the left. So let's be clear, Tucker Carlson is a fascist. Plain and simple. Now, has Tucker Carlson co-opted certain leftist language against big business? Yes. He's also used that criticism of corporations to promote baseless conspiracies, anti-LGBTQ language, and white nationalism. Notice how Tucker Carlson never really criticizes corporations, big companies, big tech, for not raising wages, having poor working conditions, busting unions, mistreating employees. He never talks about that. Never, ever talks about that. No, what they use is criticism of rainbow capitalism as a proxy to go after social progress. Now, rainbow capitalism is a problem. I will agree with that. Now, by the way, if you're wondering what rainbow capitalism is, it's basically where companies pretend to be champions of progressive causes, like, for example, the LGBTQI plus community, without actually doing anything to support them. Like, for example, advocate for, I don't know, higher wages, making sure that they're protected on the job from discrimination. Or, you know, they also just make sure that the workers get a fair wage. And these same companies also donate to anti-gay, anti-trans politicians. And then, of course, there is weaponizing identity to shut down legitimate criticism. I think it's a major problem that happens on the left. Establishment liberals tend to use that a lot to shut down progressive criticisms of politicians who unfortunately choose to serve their donors over actual people, actual workers. Like, for example, if you were to criticize a politician on the left that happens to be a woman, a Democrat, or a minority, you immediately get dogpiled. How dare you? How dare you criticize a female politician or a woman of color? How dare you? Well, I'm not criticizing her specifically I'm not talking about her race or anything like that. I'm talking about the fact that she's taking giant corporate donations and then doing exactly what the corporations want her to do and not actually serving the people. That's a problem. And so, nonetheless, we have this issue where you're called a sexist for pointing out that politician taking large amounts of corporate money, siding with those corporations, and it is deeply, deeply frustrating. That's why, and I understand this is why people move towards reactionaries like Glenn Greenwald, for example. So that kind of reactionaryism, right, from these people who now go and criticize everything that the Democrats do just to criticize Democrats and don't criticize, the right wing. I mean, that's why these people are doing so well now when it comes to online discourse. Now, here's the thing. This is where brand misses the mark, okay? There is progressive media out there. There's no progressive mainstream media, of course, right? Again, progressives aren't allowed on television. You want to wonder why that is? It's because we don't have any money. We don't have any power. There's no actual leftists in government. There's no actual leftist policies that are being pushed in government. This is all corporate. This is all establishment centrism, radical centrism, if you will, right? There is progressive media, but it unfortunately, it's on the fringes. Now, progressive media actually does call out corporations. They call out mainstream media. They call out big tech. They call out censorship. But progressive media, online independent media, does so without being a pipeline to the far right. And so that's why I see a problem with some leftist or media that claims to be leftist independent media, that they'll ignore these issues of transphobia, or they'll utilize insane conspiracy theories in order to attract that audience. But again, you know why there is no progressives in mainstream media? Because they hate progressives. Because progressives challenge the elite's economic interests. It all comes down to money. It all comes down to money. It all comes down to power. If you have the money, you have the power. Because you can buy members of government in order to push your own agenda, which happens to be the corporate agenda to make more money. You don't see progressives on CNN because CNN is a giant media corporation that will protect itself and their own economic interests. Now, getting back to Tucker Carlson, again, you don't see him actually calling for leftist principles like nationalizing oil, for example, to get oil prices down, or the banks, for example, after the 2008 financial crisis that was caused by the banks. I forget which country. I think it was Iceland or Finland. I think it was Iceland that nationalized their banking sector. And they avoided the worst of the recession. We could put a handle on gas prices if we nationalize our oil, even for a short time. But we refuse to do that. Instead, corporations were allowing them to price gouge us. You know, the Biden administration's plan to help us with gas prices, a gas tax holiday. You know what that is? That's a gimmick. That's what it is. And you know who said that? Barack Obama, calling it a gimmick. It is not going to do anything to help the inflation. In fact, it's actually going to make the road funding, infrastructure funding worse. And it's not going to take away from the profit motives of these large corporations, these oil companies that are ripping us off every single day. So, yeah. But again, you're also not going to see Tucker Carlson talk about how companies took COVID relief money and then use that money not to retain employees, not to pay them during the pandemic. No, they went and bought back their own stocks, which led to higher executive bonuses. They fired people, and then they raised their prices arbitrarily. And we can and we know that's for a fact because right now all these corporations are posting record profits at a time where they say, "Oh no, we have to raise our prices because of inflation and supply chain issues." Are there supply chain issues? Yes, there are. But the fact that they can sit there and post record profits shows that they are raising their prices far beyond what they actually needed to compensate for supply chain issues. They are price gouging us, plain and simple. They are stealing from us, is what they're doing, and blaming us for getting a stimulus check. It's BS. But do you ever see Tucker Carlson talk about that? You ever see Tucker Carlson actually holding a corporation accountable for that stuff? No. What he's going to do is he's a demagogue. He's going to blame inflation on you getting those checks, on the government, and on immigrants. And he also doesn't call it the fact that the left is not represented on cable news. In fact, he calls MSNBC the far left. That's what he does. So Tucker Carlson shouldn't be praised for a goddamn thing. You know, when he had Chris Smalls on, by the way, and I thought Chris Smalls was good for going on to Tucker Carlson and reaching that audience. But what he tried to do when Smalls was on, and Smalls did not fall for the bait, is he tried to get him to attack Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That was the whole point. You know who's not going to go on Tucker Carlson again? Chris Smalls, because he's not going to get invited. So now, if you're invited on Tucker Carlson and he keeps inviting you back, it means that you're doing exactly what Tucker Carlson wants you to do, which is to punch left. So if you're going on Tucker Carlson and you keep getting invited back as a so-called leftist, then you're doing it wrong. The goal to be on Tucker Carlson is to say something that is so objectively true and yet outrageous and damaging to the right wing than to never get invited back. That should be the goal there. That said, I don't know what Russell Brand is doing. I just don't know anymore. But it does suck. Tucker Carlson is not a populist. He's a demagogue. He blames woke culture for pretty much everything. And it doesn't surprise me that Russell Brand can't see through the grift. He's either not a very savvy person, right on some things, but again, very simple, or maybe he sees that on the right, being a faux populist might be pretty good for clicks and views. And if you want to keep building a bigger audience, that's what you do. That's where you go. Very sad to see in either case. All right. Switch gears, and I'm going to criticize Hillary Clinton. Oh, this should be fun. Former Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton has unfortunately reemerged from the woods in order to blame progressives for the impending red wave that is forecast in the midterm elections. Right now, President Biden's approval ratings are a complete and utter disaster. He is underwater. And the midterms, the forecast for that midterm election is incredibly bleak for the Democrats. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a blowout. Look, you got high inflation, you got gas prices that are incredibly high. The fact that you can't really point to any policy positions that Congress has actually passed that's going to help the material conditions for the average person. There were some policy positions that were put up, some bills that were put up. They're dead. Build Back Better is dead. The child tax credit, it's dead. Stimulus, dead. Unemployment, dead. Voting rights, very, very important. Voting rights, dead. COVID, over 1 million dead. And by the way, COVID's still here. Rent, very high. Home ownership, unattainable. Prescription drug prices, still very, very high. All of that, all of those are bread and butter issues that they have done nothing about. But Hillary Clinton knows who to blame. Progressives. For going, too far left. In an interview published last week with Financial Times editor Edward Luce, Luce writes this, and I hate the framing here, right? I cannot allow the lunch to end without questioning the direction of her party. I say that Democrats seem to be going out of their way to lose elections by elevating activist causes, notably the transgender debate. By the way, it's not a debate. Transgender people, trans rights are human rights. Simple as that. But says that these are only relevant to a small minority. What sense does it make to depict J.K. Rowling as a fascist? To my surprise, Clinton shares the premise of my question. Oh, big surprise. She's a TERF. Not surprising at all. Here's what she said in response to that. We are standing on the precipice of losing our democracy, and everything that everybody else cares about then goes out the window. Look, the most important thing is to win the next election. The alternative is so frightening that whatever happens, whatever does not help you win, should not be a priority. So basically, trans people, not a priority, even though she had claimed before that, hey, Trans people, top priority. So again, this guy's saying, trans people, you're not important. I mean, such a small group of people, who cares? Yes, sure, they're getting massively targeted by the far right. They're getting their rights stripped away. But hey, it turns out, advocating for them, not popular. It's extreme. Extreme. I mean, look at the fascism that's coming. I got news for you. For transgender Americans, fascism is already here. They're not coming for trans people. They've already come for trans people. They're attacking them every single day. Nearly 300 anti-LGBTQI plus bills have been filed so far this year. 140 of them targeting specifically trans children. But here's the establishment thinking, no. Defending trans people, that's not popular. No, if we do that, if we defend trans people and human rights, that's going to turn off our conservative voters. But we need to focus on fighting the fascism. It's already here. But this makes me think of the famous poem. And you probably heard it before. This is from Pastor Martin Niemöller. And excuse me if I butcher the name. But you may have heard this before. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Now you might be wondering, well, okay, look, this is obviously in reference to the Nazis, Nazi Germany, of course. How does that apply here? Well, remember that fascists operate by picking off the weakest among us. Those who are unable to defend themselves. And by the way, they get away with it when the majority does not defend the people who are weakest. Today, that happens to be the transgender community. Then, after that, it's going to be gay people. They're already ramping up attacks on gay people. Then they're coming after women. Already, women's rights are in the chopping block when it comes to the Supreme Court. Then it's everyone else. Then they're going to come for me, and no one else will be here to speak for me, to speak up for me. If you do not defend the weakest among us, if you don't fight the fascists with everything you have, as soon as they rear their ugly little heads, then you let them win. As soon as you start abandoning people, leaving them by the roadside, throwing them under the bus because, it's just not popular, then you're letting the fascists win. And that's the problem with the corporate Democrats, the establishment Democrats. Now, look, let me give some credit to, by the way. The Biden administration has come out and denounced all of these anti-trans bills. You don't hear a lot about it, unless Fox News rages about it, of course. And they put out a lot of statements defending the LGBTQIA plus community. They've signed an executive order to create a more diverse federal workforce, been trying to push the Equal Rights Amendment. They reversed a Trump order that would allow landlords to deny trans people the ability to rent due to their identity. So the Biden administration has actually done some pretty good things to defend trans people. And we got to give them credit where credit is due. But now the problem is Hillary Clinton, James Carville, and the rest of these corporate Democrats, they're saying, you see that? Extreme. Go woke, go broke. That's what it is. See how far the leftists have gone? It's their fault. It's the left's fault. They're losing because they're focusing on this woke bullshit. No. See, here's the thing. Not throwing trans people under the bus is not why Democrats are losing or going to lose. This doesn't have anything to do with being wokeist or wokeism or defending trans people too much or going too left on social issues. No. It's because the Democrats have failed to do anything to improve anybody's material conditions. That's it. Remember all the stuff that Joe Biden had promised. Remember the $2,000 stimulus checks? Where did those go? Now the Federal Reserve, by the way, instead of giving money, helping people who are poor, who are struggling, they're blaming the inflation that is going on the very same stimulus checks. Also, remember how there's this gigantic push to get everybody back to work. Oh, you got to get back to work. Got to get back to work. We got to end unemployment benefits. We got to push people from remote work back into the office. We got to do all of that, right? Now the Federal Reserve is also saying, or more specifically, Larry Summers is saying, oh, actually, you know what? Instead of getting people back to work, we actually need unemployment. Not unemployment benefits. We just need more people that are without jobs. Here's a quote from him. He says, we need 5 years of unemployment above 5% to contain inflation. In other words, we need 2 years of 7.5% unemployment, or 5 years of 6% unemployment, or 1 year of 10% unemployment. That's what he said would cool inflation. Hey, we just need to have austerity. We need to have millions of people lose their jobs. That's what we need to have. That's what will stop inflation. Because there's just too much money in the country. We gave people too much money. We gave regular people too much money. And then you have the Fed, Jerome Powell. Here's what he said during a Senate Banking Committee hearing on Wednesday. So this was specifically being asked by Elizabeth Warren. She asked Powell if Fed rate increases to cool inflation will actually help average people, right? Like, for example, gas prices. She asked about gas prices. Is raising the federal interest rate, which is what they plan to do, will that help gas prices? He responded with, I would not think so. Interesting. Warren then asked if grocery prices would go down if you were to do this. He also said, I wouldn't say so, no. She then said later, inflation is like an illness, and the medicine needs to be tailored to the specific problem. Otherwise, you could make things a lot worse. Right now, the Fed has no control over the main drivers of rising prices, but the Fed can slow demand by getting a lot of people fired and making families poorer. Understand that this is what the administration is looking at doing to combat inflation. They're possibly looking at putting the United States into a recession. Now, Joe Biden comes out and says, oh, no recession, no recession. We're just going to have the Fed raise, interest rates. We got to do that. And then, we're going to give a gas tax holiday, which is a gimmick. But, we're not going to actually do anything else to raise rate. In fact, it would probably be better, according to business leaders, if wages go down. Because there's too much money in people's pockets. That's the problem. That's the real problem. No. And then, by the way, these same people who are blaming receiving stimulus checks, people receiving stimulus checks for the inflation, they ignore the trillions of dollars that went to the banks. They ignore the trillions of dollars that went to corporations, who then bought back their own stocks and raised their prices anyway. That's why they're posting record profits and why they have record executive pay. But here's Hillary Clinton saying, no, ignore all of that. No, the reason that we're not doing well is because we went too far left on social issues. And how we win, how we defeat fascism is to throw transgender people under the bus. This is the trolley problem, okay? She's going to flip the switch to have the trolley run over trans people. And then, guess what? They're going to lose anyway. Ridiculous. All right, there's more. She has more criticism, by the way. The conversation then went on with Clinton warning Democrats to break off the public campaign to quote unquote defund the police, saying you need accountable measures, but you also need policing. It doesn't even pass the common sense politics test. Not to believe that. You know who doesn't pass the test? Hillary Clinton. She has no idea what defund the police actually means. She doesn't. Accountable measures is what defund police is. Okay? That's part of it, at least. Look, defund the police, I agree with it. Okay? Now, I agree with the sentiment. The name is kind of problematic. Of course, it leads to a lot of obvious misunderstanding, which we have seen, but it doesn't mean no police. It means using funding that would have been spent on militarization, buying military gear, and outfitting our the Freudian slip here, outfitting our cops to look like troops that are in an occupying country. You look at some of the pictures of police, they look almost no different from soldiers that we had patrolling Fallujah. And these are our own cities. They do not need the money for that. They don't need the money for this high-end equipment. No, in reality, defund the police means not militarizing them and taking that additional money that would have been spent on that and funding social workers, funding mental health care, funding addiction services, ending homelessness. All the additional money that you could have in the community to prevent these crimes from happening in the first place. It doesn't mean getting rid of police. You don't get rid of police. No, under a defund the police scenario, you would also retrain the police away from what they're doing now, which obviously isn't working. You look at what happened in Uvalde. Too cowardly, even with all their advanced equipment, to run in and save 19 children from a mass shooter. All the equipment in the world couldn't have made these cops go in. Their training, they were trained to be cowards. Trained to be cowards. All right. But anyway, she then says, some positions are so extreme on both the right and the left that they retreat to their corners. Politics should be the art of addition, not subtraction. First off, why should we listen to advice about winning from someone who lost to Donald freaking Trump? Why? Why? Makes no sense, does it? Secondly, can you point to one extreme position on the left? One extremist position. When you have the right wing that is fascist. You have the right wing that is literally forcing regular people, taxpayers, to now force for religious indoctrination in schools, in private schools. Okay? I mean, that's extreme. Banning books all over schools because they don't like the content of it. Accusing teachers and gay people being groomers, grooming children, pedophiles. That's extreme. Is there anything on the left that's comparable to that? No, there isn't. Give one example. But to her, extreme is wanting to do anything that might potentially hurt the donors. Her donors. Members of industry. That's what it is. Now, secondly, of course, or thirdly, when it comes to extreme, defending trans rights is not extreme at all. Defending trans rights is the right thing to do. And Hillary Clinton claimed that she used to be on that side. Oh, under a Hillary Clinton administration, we will put transgender and LGBTQI plus rights on the forefront. That will be your number one priority, is to defend them. And now she shows her true colors and saying, transgender people, what name so? Don't care. Not a priority. Not a priority. Defending them is too extreme. Look, Hillary Clinton, as always, would rather punch left than admit that her radical centrism has absolutely failed. And rather than admit that the Biden administration has failed to honor so many of its campaign promises and has not addressed the material conditions of the average person, of the American people that they are supposed to serve. Hillary Clinton should have stayed in the woods instead of popping her head up to punch left as she always does. Gross. No wonder she lost. All right. That's all I got for you today. Let's go to super chats here. We've got a couple. Just want to read them. So let's go here. Let's see. Jonathan Leiter says, what's become of the left? Nothing. Rusty has moved to the right because that's where the money can be grifted better. Hang on, Jeff, you rock. Thank you. I appreciate that. Marty Darna says, the fascists will have to go through me. Damn right. Gabby Mathis says, Martin, Niemiller's poem hangs up on my wall. It was for years in my office. Based. Love it. Love it. Very based. Let's see. Chipperdoodle in PA, thank you for the resub for a month at tier 1 for 19 months. Hey, thank you. Really appreciate that. Thank you, of course, for all the new follows as well. If you want to follow me on Twitch, of course, you can follow my channel, twitch.tv, Jeff_Waldorf. Very important. You help me out there. Follow us, you know. Thank you for the subs and the gifts. You know, the gifted subs when you do that and the bits when you do that. Really appreciate that. And thank you for the super chats over here on YouTube. Again, we need them more than ever. Also, if you haven't already, please visit our Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. We always need your help. All right. So that said, we're going to raid someone else here on Twitch. We're going to raid into, let's see. Did we do a surfs raid yesterday? No, we didn't. Let's do a surfs raid today. With that, thank you again, everybody. Really appreciate you all. As always, love you all. Thank you, and remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. See you all tomorrow. Have a great night.
Obama. Get in a long tube with a bunch of beans.
No.
And why their due process rights are being so flagrantly and horrifically violated.
Bullshit. Every goddamn thing out of you people's mouths doesn't come true. They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.